Okay, we're gonna dive on in and we'll make some order out of all this here. What I'm probably gonna do is actually start with the whole notion of working with that PDF and bringing in and getting the information there. And from that, I'll take a look at this issue of the copy monitoring of the levels and some of the levels things before we actually get into the structural modeling and some of the things we want to do about adding more detail. But along the way, we'll take a look at this whole notion of the ordering of how you model the pieces. And that roofs are often, I should let you know, one of the trickiest elements to go through and model because they're really incredibly complex objects about how you specify the geometry. The whole notion of specifying baselines and slopes off of baselines. There's a lot of tricks to how you do that. And sometimes you basically resort to making several roofs. But we'll kind of see if we can kind of touch on that.
So I have the drawings if you will.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, excellent. So let us go ahead and get started. And we'll start with the notion of really, you have all this information in these PDF files, how you can actually go through and use that. So what's a good floor plan that's pretty comprehensive right now? Just like one of these, like A101 or A103? Let's take a look and see what that looks like. Okay, that's not looking too bad in terms of what's going on. Let us talk about what you can actually do with something like this to use it within the whole Revit environment and actually help yourself. Most PDF systems will actually let you take the PDF out as a JPEG or export them to some sort of format that you can actually use. And if you had the original DWGs, super, you could bring those right in and you could scale them and kind of work directly with those. But even if you have PDFs where you don't have that, we can usually go through and go to some other formats. So what am I here? Okay, here I just have cases like Foxit Reader or something like that. If we had Acrobat, we could actually bring those out as JPEGs or something like that. We can actually do an export to them. So how about this? If we don't have that, is Acrobat on this machine? Let's see if it is. Let's see what it's got available. Nope, still not there. So select file, convert to PDF. It's the other way. Export the PDF. Again, PDF Reader is not having it. You want a format that basically lets you go through and, well, we could even do it with like a screen capture or something like that. Mm-hmm. That'll work too. But basically, all you're really looking for is to try and get a JPEG or a PNG, either one of this image. So let's think about doing it that way. So on these machines, is there anything that I can go through and take a JPEG with? Or take a screenshot?
I'm not sure.
It's good?
It's not an edit, snapshot. There's a tick snapshot.
Can you print it?
Ah, check that out. Okay, if I'm going to do that, then let me do this. Let me try to kind of bump up as high a scale as I can sort of get away with. Let's see what it's doing right now. Looks like it's taking its time about rendering the data.
I think it's too big. Maybe it's 50%.
Let us see. Yeah, that's not too bad. Thank you. Okay, so even in here, 25. Oh, that's not so bad. Okay. Here's what we're going to do. I want to take a snapshot of this and basically save it as a JPEG of some type. So whatever tool is going to work for you. So let's try to take a snapshot. Area has been copied. Okay, so we're hanging around there. We've copied it in there. It's on the clipboard now. That's interesting. I actually want to go through and save it. So do I have a paint program on here or something like that? I'm just, again, trying to save something out. And let me try into accessories or something like that. If you can, that'd be fantastic. All we're really doing is, we're just fumbling around trying to look for, here's paint. See if I can paint it and drop it in there. Beautiful. See, a lot of times as you're trying to do things, you don't see what you're doing. Exactly. So
you probably use the Mac.
That is definitely true. So save as PNG. What else I got in here? I got a JPEG. Doesn't really matter which environment it is. And let me go save this out. I'll put it out in that downloads folder. And it's going to be like my first floor plan. The reason I want to do this is ultimately, even though we don't have the JPEG or the DWG that was originally used or the Revit model that was used to create this, you do have a lot of information. If that thing is to scale, you can actually use that. And that's useful to you. So if I go ahead, and now that I've created that screenshot, however I had to go through and create that screenshot, I can now use that within Revit. So let me open up Revit and show you what you can actually do. Got a bunch of instances of all that open. I close those up. Let me come back over here to Revit and see if I can get that to open up. And if we can, we'll bring that JPEG in and actually use it to actually measure directly from the JPEG, which is, for what you're doing, probably not a bad approach to doing this. It's really, again, remember, what you're going after isn't the most technically accurate model. So if that door is 6 inches off from where it is in the drawings, that's not the point nearly as much as the process you're going through and using to kind of create the model. So let me just start a new model out of the architectural template and show you how this works. But this whole idea of trying to gather as much information out of those PDFs as possible, because there is an incredible amount of information in there.
That was pretty nice.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, because it's really going to help you. So here we are, we're just sort of on the first floor plan. Everything's kind of looking very ordinary at this point. Let me do this. I will go through, and what I want to do is actually insert, and I'm going to insert, an image. It's actually hanging right there. Insert an image file. If I grab that, I can go out to, hopefully, my users downloads folder, wherever that went to. Go to documents. Come back to instructor, downloads, and somewhere there I have that first floor plan JPEG. I'll bring it in. Now, when you first bring it in, it has no scale. It really is just a bunch of dots. Okay, and so one of your first tasks is actually to figure out how to get that to scale. Okay, not so bad. We'll figure this out. Okay, all we really need is, and we can stretch this up if you want to whatever we sort of think it might be. And zoom on in there. Okay. What we need is, we need some dimension that we know. And usually one of the best ones is between the grid lines or something like that. Just you have some known dimension somewhere on the plans. So does anyone have a dimension that we can use? For example, in one of the other drawings, you probably have a dimension between grid line 4 and grid line 5, or if you actually happen to know the dimension all the way from A to J, that's a really good one because it'll be a really long dimension, will scale very accurately. When you do this, try and get the longest thing you know a dimension for and scale that, because trying to scale based off of a few feet, you have just the inaccuracy of the pixels. So on this building, how long is that building? From A to
Can
J?
somebody measure from or find out from A to J?
Is it
119.
what?
119.
119 feet? Even?
And 8 inches.
Okay, 119.8. Here's the deal. We will come on over and we'll do a little measuring. We can grab our little measuring stick, which is up there in the toolbar. And I can say, let's drag from this point all the way over to here. And you see it's currently 79, 81 feet, something like that. So not quite right in terms of really what we have in mind. Okay, we need to make it bigger. And you can go through and do the math. You can sort of figure this out. Oh, given that ratio, I need to make it 150% the size, whatever it is, stuff like that. But I think we ought to be able to do this even graphically. So let me see if I can get that to work for you. The scaling tool is right here. And we can scale in a number of different ways. One of the ways I like to do is I'll basically take the picture and I'll grab the scaling tool. And you have the choice of numerical or graphical. And numerical would be, I will type in a number here like 1.5, and it'll going to scale it up evenly, whatever that is. Graphical works like this. If I take and I click from here to here, and try and get down, I can zoom in and try and get really accurate here. I'm going to have to go even further. Okay. Click it in a new position for the drag point. I want it to be here. Hang on, I did it wrong in terms of what you're doing. Basically what I want to do is basically enter in a new dimension for what that is. Let me try this again. So what I'm going to do is scale. I don't do this very often. That's why I'm kind of like messing around a little bit. I'll go from here to here. And then what I want to do is go to the new position. So at this point, I can type in like 118,
119.8.
119.8. And if I did that right, it'll scale. So just pop it up. So by doing that, now if I take my measuring stick and go here, over to there, and get that 119.8. So again, it's a really good way. What it is click a first point, measure out to some known distance, and it'll give you the incorrect distance. Then you basically enter in the correct distance, and it'll scale the drawing to give you that. Okay, and the reason I like doing that is then all of a sudden, whether it's placing those grid lines or locating doors or really anything that you're not quite sure about, you can usually get all sorts of information here about where the windows are located, where the doors are located. It's just sort of a good way of scaling. Yeah.
I uploaded DWG.
Oh, yeah. Okay, excellent. Okay, another very powerful way to do this is as follows.
You uploaded in Blackboard?
Okay, let's go out to Blackboard and show you that. So if we go to Blackboard, and Bertrand, why don't you drive us, take us to that?
Okay. Yeah.
Excellent. So if you can get access to the DWG file, and you also have the JPEG, super. Let's pull that one down. And where'd that go out to? It's in the, just out in the downloads again? Super.
Yeah.
Okay. Another equally valid way to do this, just really, in fact, the DWG is even better because it won't be a fuzzy drawing like this. Even with this, the higher the resolution, the better in terms of being able to get that, would be to do something like this. I'm going to open it up as another project. So similar sort of idea. I'm hanging out here on level 1. I'm going to do an insert. In this case, as opposed to inserting an image, I'm going to insert a CAD file. Actually, I can import the CAD file I want, or I can link to it. Again, the difference between inserting or importing and linking is linking establishes sort of a connection to it sitting out on a disk somewhere. So if you don't want to put it into your file, you just want to access the information temporarily, but you'll have to sort of relink to it later if you want to get to it again. Linking is kind of a good way to keep it fresh. Importing brings it in and kind of carries the weight. So either way will work. Let me import it here. I'll say, let's go out there and grab, and there's my level 1 DWG. Okay. In terms of what's going on here, it'll generally, we hope, do a pretty good job about auto-detecting the units. Again, if it doesn't do such a good job, we can always scale it. Sometimes DWGs don't actually carry that information, but usually they do. Oh, put it on center to center, that would be fine. Or if you have already created your building, you could sort of be very precise about positioning it. Or let me show you, we can even sort of move the two things relative to each other, because that may be what you'll end up doing. You already have part of the building modeled, and you'll add it in there. So place it at level 1, that's fine. Let's go for that. Okay. Current view only might be a useful thing. That's the whole notion. Do you want this thing visible in all the views, or do you just want to have it be available in this one view where you're putting it in there? And it's kind of a choice. I'll just make it in this current view. It'll only be in level 1, because this level 1 floor plan would only really apply to level 1. Kind of keep things light. So let's take a look at what this looks like. It'll import there. Oh, there's all sorts of information in here, including it's kind of oriented funny. It's looking a little strange, but not to worry. We will fix some of these things. So we got this DWG. The DWG is just an object. So we can use all our kind of standard drafting and modeling tricks, one of which is we can rotate it. So under the kind of main modify tab, I can say, let's rotate this. If you haven't rotated anything in Revit, it works by you choose an object, and it gives you this arc. And from that arc, you can basically just pick a starting point and an ending point for the rotation. Okay. And that'll get it on down to where we want it. So we should do the same sort of thing now. We should be able to measure really from what A is to J. And to do that, the nice thing about DWGs though is you don't even have to like just sort of use the little measuring stick and well, it'll work. Again, kind of 89. It's kind of an interesting measurement right now. So again, it's not quite to the scale. Our drawing right now, you'll see, is at 8th scale. Okay. When it brought it in, it's at some other scale. You know, I'm not sure if it's 3/16 or it's some odd scale. But how we fix that is just the way we did it before. We'll go through and say, no worries. We can grab that thing. We'll use the scale tool. It's right here. And again, I like to do it graphically because then I don't have to do the math. I'll click on that one. I'll click on this guy over here. Let's see if I can get to it. Okay, and that's currently 96. And now what I've got to go through and pull that out and sort of say that it is that once again, 119'8". Okay, and now in theory, that thing's actually to scale. Try that. Looking good. So the nice thing about actually doing it from the DWG, if you have access to that, is unlike the JPEG, which is scaled to, you know, the resolution's only as good as when you took the screenshot. You know, so it's inherently fuzzy. The DWG is actually incredibly precise. So how you can use this is as follows. What you can do is you can say, hey, I'm going to put some, yes, go on.
Sorry, I was wondering, how did you rotate it?
Oh, to rotate it, just grab the object. So click on that, and then the rotate tools in the modify palette.
I tried that, then it says you can't rotate it.
Is it interesting? So when yours came in, it's pinned?
Yeah, I just like the way you did it.
Yeah. Okay, and the message is that you can't rotate a pinned element?
Yeah.
Try this. Go ahead and click on it, and if there's see if you have something in here that looks like a pin or an unpin right in there, because that'll unpin it. Let's see if that'll do it. So is it pinned, or what do you think?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay, great. Fantastic. Now, how you can actually use these is almost like tracing surfaces is as follows. So you have some walls. You're going to place some walls in here as you're doing your architectural modeling. So you could go ahead and say, let's go ahead and to the point of how I usually start with the walls. Now, that's kind of a violation because I'll almost always tell you that I will model it the same way I will build it. And you don't build the walls first. But I sort of make the exception on this one. I'll usually put the walls in first because architecturally I tend to think about the walls and those spaces as a designer. And then later I'll go through and add the floors and foundations. But that's kind of my architectural side versus my civil engineering side.
The battle inside you.
Exactly. I struggle with this all the time. So what I'll do is I'll grab the walls. The wall tool, I'll choose an architectural wall type. And then choose some sort of type, and whether I'm going to use a generic wall or a more articulated wall, you can sort of decide depending on what level you're at. Let me go through, and I'll just use a generic wall for right now. And what I'll do is I'll come on down here and watch this. So you have this notion here of really we're going to place the walls in there. So I probably want them to go up to level 2, or in your building it's probably level 1.5. Yeah, that kind of intermediate level. You have this notion of really, are you going to be modeling to the center line or the exterior face? Go ahead and, when you're modeling this way, pick whatever is the easiest one for you to grab the points. And for this, it'll actually probably be easier to grab the either exterior points or the interior. I would grab the exterior ones. So I'll say, I'm going to grab the exterior faces, points, and then I can actually come on in here and just really zoom right to them. And it'll snap to them. Now, I can tell right away that this is not a really great wall choice because you'll see my wall is so incredibly skinny compared to that wall. So if I am smart, I'll stop before I go much further and say, let's grab out that little measuring tool and sort of run a little dimension in here and sort of see. As best we can tell, hang on, I sort of clicked prematurely there. From here to the outside surface, it looks like you have some sort of concrete and maybe an outer layer of stucco. It's like 1 foot 3 3/16. Okay, so if we need a wall that's 1 foot 3 3/16, we can go through and create that. It's really what we're going to be doing a lot kind of throughout the day is really, if we have things that need to be a dimension and we don't have things loaded in already that are that dimension, we're going to get used to this whole notion that we take an existing thing, we duplicate it, and just kind of change its properties so it's exactly what we need. So here's what that would look like. I'm going to grab that wall, my little 8-inch wall, which isn't right, and I'm going to say, let's edit a type. And here's the deal. You could just start changing the dimensions of the 8-inch wall, but the danger of doing that is the 8-inch walls that you've already placed that really want to be 8-inch walls are also going to change. So the better thing to do, and I'll get used to this, we're doing it, is create a new wall type, okay, and then you start using that. So don't just change the 8-inch wall. What I usually say is duplicate, just in case, because it might not be you, it might be someone else on your team who used that 8-inch wall and you don't want to mess up their work. Duplicate it. I can say that it's, what was it, 1'3" and whatever?
1.3 and
some odd. There it is.
360.
Okay. Now, but let me even be a little bit better about this, because it's not really just a generic 8-inch wall. That wall actually has some meaning. So you want to convey as much meaning in your modeling wall types as possible. So you might actually want to call that, whatever you sort of think that is. It's kind of, if that's the exterior wall, and you think it's basically concrete plus stucco, give it a name that actually sort of conveys that meaning. Because later on, you want someone else to be able to go down that list and kind of choose these and understand really what that represents. Now, that's just a name. That's not changing anything right now. We can then go through and change the properties. Again, how you change the properties is though every wall has a structure, and this indicates the thickness of the different layers. And you can decide here, if you want to just make that 1'3" and 3/16, super. It's kind of like a monolithic wall at that point. What you'll probably do later on, though, is maybe we'll start just making it this, but as we go later on, we'll say, okay, I got this wall structure. Now I'm going to actually sort of break it out into the materials and the layers that make it up. So you can do it now or you can do it later, either way. For example, if I think that is, basically everything but 1 inch of stucco on the outside, whatever we think it is. What I could do is say that, okay, not just 1'3" and 3/16, maybe it's 1'2" and 3/16, whatever it is, and I can add another layer above it, which will really be, we consider it a finished layer. It'll be like 1 inch thick. So let me stop and pause there for a second, because when we're doing that, we're sort of moving between like a level 200 model and a level 400 model. You gotta decide sort of where you want to be in your process. Very quickly, to get things going, it's fine to make it 1'3" and 3/16. Later on, you can go through and say, hey, all those 1'3" and 3/16, they're actually made of 2 different layers. And it's really just whether you want to put that work in now or later. Very early on, typically people will just kind of make it a single material, let it be that, understand the overall form, then add the materiality later. Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But they have the drawing, so they might as well start with the detail.
So if you want to go through, and you can even say, I do happen to know that's concrete. At least I can tell by looking at the drawings. So you can assign that a materiality. Even for this outer layer here, that's really kind of more of a finished layer. Notice even we're starting to assign different categories to the types of materials. It'll sort of play in a little bit later when we think about how they merge together. So this has some sort of, it's like stucco or plaster. Looks like they don't have that automatically available in the little library here. These are the materials that are in the project just by default. If you want to grab a material that isn't in that list, there's actually a huge library, and they're all kind of hiding from you. There's a little browser that is typically hidden. It kind of shows up when you kind of click that button. But we can basically say that now we want to go through and look out here for some sort of material, like they have plaster materials. And there's a nice stucco. If I want to use stucco and make that available, I can either click here or double click it. Either way, it'll pull it up in the project. So then we have a different material. Now, materials are really kind of cool from a number of perspectives. It's kind of good from a construction perspective. You want to know what the material is, so you have accurate quantities of just that outer inch of stucco versus the whole thickness of the wall. It's cool from a rendering perspective because you give them different appearances, and when you want to have a nice 3D appearance and render it, the more accurately you can assign, the better. It also has thermal properties. If you're going to use your model to actually do some energy modeling and try to understand the heat flow through all the wall surfaces, choosing accurate materials is definitely one of those really good things to do. The more accurate you can be, the more useful your model is going to be. But again, don't think you have to make it 100% accurate the first time through. It's kind of where you want. Yeah.
I tried to copy one wall and modify it for the walls.
Yes. By duplicate. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it had like the existing one had some thermal, and I know the ones she wants to do was like the thermal was 0, so I couldn't change that to 0. How do you?
Okay. If you have some existing material and it doesn't have thermal properties, okay, part of it is, okay, let's go back and kind of address that. Let me show you what this has done, and then we'll go back and kind of address where you are. We went through and we chose some materials like concrete, and we chose some material like stucco. And actually, in the database, there's good information about the density and the conductivity of those materials. So it's saying that right now, as best it understands, this wall has a R value using the US Smith system of only 2.1. It's not really a very thermally efficient wall. If it's registering as 0 right now, what's happening is in the structure. So I'll go back to the structure. The materials that are actually chosen here don't have thermal properties assigned to them. So how you can fix that if you have an older wall type, okay, and you want to add thermal properties, is you open up the material, okay, just by clicking right there to get this little materials dialog. And some of the materials, especially if you have an older model that you've brought forward prior to 2014, they don't have these tabs for physical and thermal properties. And if you want to add them, what we need to do is actually, it's down in here. No, I got to find where it is. We're going to add the thermal properties, and I always have to find the button where it is. It's down in here somewhere, but I got to think what I have to do. It's not there. It's not there. Is it here? And that's just going to close it up. It's embarrassing. It's like all these things where you sort of use them every once in a while, then you have to go like stumbling around and finding them. So the thermal property tab is there. But let me figure out where this is. Autodesk materials. No. That's there. That's the home. Yeah. I know it's a button that's supposed to be down in here. I got to figure out where it is right now, because you're basically going to add a new tab that's going to add thermal properties to it. Actually, let me try this. Yeah, I wonder if all these, if it's not showing up just because these ones already have the thermal properties. No, that's just kind of controlling the browser. Again, that's just controlling the browser. Oh, I'm going to find it, but it's evading me right now. There's basically a way that we add new tabs to this. Actually, is it over here? That just duplicates the asset. Again, I'll figure it out. It's somewhere buried alive in this dialog. There's a magic button we click, and it actually sort of offers you the ability to add new panes that don't already exist. In fact, I'm wondering if I had a material that didn't have those properties, I bet there's a way that we can add them.
Is that what you were asking? Or were you asking to remove the thermal
No, I
properties?
was asking to remove.
Remove it.
So just to remove the thermal. So, because currently it has 0 as a thermal property.
No, the existing one
Has
has a number,
0.
but it won't let you edit it to 0.
Oh, yeah, you want to make it 0 in terms of what's going on. No. So what it is basically if you come on back and, if it has thermal properties, and that's going to just delete the whole material. Hang on.
Add to.
Now add to, I think, is actually going to go through and do that. Let me try this. Okay. So you can delete the thermal properties. Okay, and there's the magic button. I knew it was just here somewhere. Okay, if you have properties that you don't want, you delete them by right-clicking. If you click here, you can add the thermal properties back in. Oh, okay, see, I'm not totally crazy, just partially.
Since it was there.
It is there, it just isn't there for, okay. So if you want to get rid of thermal, that's how you do it. Okay, so let's...
That answered 2 questions, not one.
Exactly. Okay, so I will go through and say okay to this. I now have this fantastic looking wall that looks like it's about the right thickness, so I can go through and change these ones over here and kind of also make them out of that same material. exterior wall, concrete and stucco. And hopefully now you'll be able to kind of keep on tracing and adding out and kind of just, continuing to add to the model. Now, as you go through the model, if you do use this sort of tracing methodology, we kind of talk about other things you can do with this that just might help you get started. Now, for the most part, this works pretty well. What I'm going to keep on doing is I'm going to keep on tracing walls left to right. And the reason I trace walls left to right is it has to do with the notion of whether I'm picking the inside or the outside of the walls. And it's a very subtle thing. It probably won't bother you too much, but let me show you what the effect is. If I trace, get the fat wall that I sort of said I was going to use. Switch that over.
It's up.
There we go. Thank you. Okay. If I go tracing this wall right to left, and we're tracing the outside, or left to right, excuse me, or if you could even think about it in a clockwise direction moving around the building, okay, you're basically going to be putting the insides on the inner side of the circle, the outsides on the outer side of the circle. So that's just will save you some time in the long run to do it that way. If you do it the other way, which is I'll grab that same wall, but I go this way, okay, it'll put it on the other side of the wall. So there is a notion to, as it lays down the wall, which side it puts the thickness on relative to that as you trace that line. Not to worry, if you do put the wall on the wrong side, you can choose it and click that little glyph, it'll flip it over and kind of give you the right side of the wall. Okay. So we can do that. Other things to think about relative to tracing. If you do that, and you're looking pretty fine, and you then want to go back and start adding in those doors and windows and things like that, probably one of the best things for you to do is actually just, right now we're in hidden line mode, just switch over to wireframe mode, and then you'll be able to see through and be able to kind of actually say, I need a window. I'll grab some sort of window. Again, I won't be able to tell everything about the window just in this floor plan view. I'll need to kind of cross-check with the elevation views to figure out what's going on. But I can go through and say that from here to here, it looks like it's about a 2'6" window. So I can go out to the windows and go grabbing, see if I can find some nice 30-inch window. Oops, I don't have a 30-inch window. I have a 24-inch window. I got a 36-inch window. I'm hosed. I can't do anything. I am stuck. There's no salvation here. I can't get out of the situation. Or at least you might feel that at first, but you can't. You can always, what's that?
Not the end of the world.
It's never the end of the world. At least not in this class anyway. So we will say edit that type, and you'll get so used to doing this. I'm going to grab one that's sort of like it. I'm going to say, let's go through and make a 30 by 48-inch window. Of course, you may want to make one that, based on your elevations, is the proper size. Okay, that's just a name. Don't be confused by that. It's just a convenience name for starting to find it in the list. I can make that 2'6" or 0'30", either way you like. And now I can go through and place that window. Now, as you're placing windows, just so you might want to know, there's as you place the window, relative to the center of the wall, if you click just to the outside edge of the wall, it'll put them in. That's how you indicate where the outside of the window is. Click to the outside edge of the wall. Okay, and it'll place that in there. Okay. Again, if your window ends up being backwards, your outside ends up in or your inside ends up out. Just go and flip it over. This window is actually kind of an interesting window. Can you tell that actually it's sort of deeply inset? Okay, and that's something we're going to spend some time on, talking about families and how you adjust family properties and make things fit your construction. What happens is a lot of the standard types that just kind of come from light frame wooden construction need a little bit of adaptation to sort of match this. This building is kind of a heavy, it's really kind of a fake masonry construction, but it's sort of supposed to have that heavy masonry feel. And if you need to start adapting things, we can. For example, the windows have all these nice parameters that let us adjust their behavior. And one of the parameters is just this notion of the inset and really how far the glass is inset. So right now you'll see the glass is only set to only inset 3/4 of an inch. It's really almost flush with the outside surface. And if you don't want that, if you want a nicely deeply inset window, you can go through and put a much deeper inset in there, like a foot, whatever it is. Try applying that. Maybe a foot's a little too far. 0 foot 11. Okay, that's probably pretty close. So in terms of my procedure, notice I'm kind of approaching it this way. I start with the walls, and okay, I'll sort of figure out the wall types. So before I put every wall in, let me figure out sort of the walls that are in my toolkit of things that I'm likely to use on this building. Because the truth is, architects are really repetitive. They'll choose 2 or 3 major wall types and repeat them throughout most of the building. Okay. Now I'm going to go back and put the windows in, and again, I'll figure out what the most common one is, kind of get that inset looking just right. And then as I go moving around through the building, I'll keep on using versions of this one that has that 11-inch inset, changing the sizes as I need. But it's almost like I sort of start building up my little toolkit of standard parts and carry that with me as I go through and do my modeling. Because that's actually the way architects work. Designers like to have consistency across the buildings. They don't keep on going back to the main library. You start building up your pieces that you reuse a lot. Yeah.
I was wondering, so say for example you built all these 3 walls, and then for whatever reason you discovered the type was wrong. How would you go about easily selecting all these 3 walls specifically?
Sure, let's take a look at that. That is a very good question. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to go through and turn it back into hidden lines so you'll see this a little bit better. So for example, you have all these walls that are of a certain type, this exterior wall, concrete, and stucco. You got some choice here. We could just go ahead and start changing the properties of these type, and then all the walls that are made of that type will inherit the properties. So you can just change the type and it'll go from there. So it turns out that it's really 2 inches of stucco and it's not concrete, it's some sort of foam or something. You can just change it there just by editing that property and going through and change that. That'll change them all. But let me kind of show you, it's almost the same question, but there's a little nuance to it. The other way to go at this is if you have something like all these walls and you want to grab everything that has that same type and select it for whatever reason, whether you're going to delete it, whatever it is, you can say, let's go ahead and right click on it. One of the choices is, I'll find it's not the joined elements, select all instances. And I can say visible in the view. It'll grab everything that has that same type. So if you put in a 30-inch window, here's where it'd be useful. If you put in a 30-inch window and you assume they were 48 inches tall, but it turns out they were all 60 inches tall. Okay. A good thing to do is select one of them, select all of them, and then change. So for example, I can grab this one. I'll put a couple more in there just so I have some to work with. So I'm going to put more in here and just sort of assume. Okay, so I put those in there. I can grab one. I can say select all the instances, either just in the view or in the whole project if you're really feeling daring, but realize that you might change things on other floors. I have all 3 of those windows. So now I can say, oh, they're really like a 72-inch tall window or something like that, and just change them all. So there really is this premium, and this is almost this thing about consistency amongst yourselves. If you were one of the teams that broke up the architectural design, so someone's doing one part of the building and the other person's doing another part of the building, it's very good early on. Kind of figure out what your standard wall types, your standard window types are that you're all going to use, so that you're all not recreating them independently, and then having to sort of match them all up at the end. So
how are you guys organizing yourselves? Like in your team, for example?
We have we make structural and architectural teams. We have only people, one leader for each.
Mm-hmm.
We have someone supporting him. So the leader discuss with his teammate or the architect, for example, how they want to do it. And the structure also the same.
Mm-hmm.
So as he said, one will build the doors and the other one will build the walls and the other. So everyone will focus on one element.
What about you guys?
One is doing the structure and 2 on the architecture. The architecture one is doing all the internal walls, doors, and one is taking the external. We're running away from basic problems and duplicating the work by trying to run away from that way.
good.
make everybody can do the structure and architecture work. So one of us do the level 1 structure and construction and architecture and other different levels.
Okay.
So, a little bit of everything.
Yeah. So if you are doing similar sorts of work but on different levels of different sections, and that coordination becomes even more important, so that whatever walls used on level 1, level 2 is also using, and level 3 is also using. So yeah, even before everyone does a whole lot of modeling, it's really good to spend some time just going through the drawings and trying to figure out how many wall types are there in this building. And there's probably 4 or 5 major ones that'll get 95% of it. Yeah, and then everyone have those to work with so that you don't have to kind of recreate them all from scratch. Beauty. Okay, let us do this. We're going to get to the issue of the grids and the relinking the files. Let me take a look at that roof for just a second, because roofs in particular are one of these really weird objects. So let me just kind of take a look at the roof model, and we'll sort of see if we can sort of figure out how that might be represented. Because if there's something unusual going on, okay. Let's take a look. So if we were going to go out and look in the 2D drawings, what's a good view that shows me the roof? And I might be able to sort of see how it all fits together. So is there a drawing that's particularly good to kind of show the roof? I could go to the roof plan. I have these axonometric views. What's a good one that kind of shows me the roof?
One of the elevations?
So which drawing number is it? Up in there?
104.
Oh, 104?
Yes.
Okay, let's take a look. Ah, okay. This is not so bad. Okay, let's talk about it. It is funny because you have this little tower roof. So there's this issue, there's this little area over here, and then there's this area over here. Okay, and there's sort of 2 different pieces of roof. Okay, is that sort of the issue of how to work with that? Okay, no worries. Let's take a look at that, because it's actually...
Are you asking about how they come together, or the opening in the larger room?
You like that one?
Well, like the hole in the middle? Or which piece?
I think here. This one?
So the left, yeah. Here.
Okay, so you have basically, I would definitely model that as 2 different roofs. Let me kind of give you a real quickie example of how you might do something like this. Okay, and it won't be to scale to your drawing, but hopefully it'll give you sort of the sense of what you want to do. Okay, so what we're going to do is, okay, let me go back to the architectural model. And we'll just do a real kind of quick pseudo representation of this. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to just hide that gigantic DWG because it's going to bother me after a while. So, and I'm going to go through and build a little building next door to it. Okay, so for my little building over here, let me do this. Let me set up my levels first because that'll make it a little bit easier for me. I'll let one sort of set of things go from level 1 to level 2, and then I'll do a level 3, which will be that taller tower roof. So I'll say, let's put a level 3 in here. And we'll go through back to the floor plan and just kind of get ready for this. So one of the structures looks something like this. I can use my big heavy wall, that's fine. I'll trace some lines. I'm going to go from level, up to level 2, that's fine. So one of the buildings, the lower part of the building looks kind of like this. Yeah, more or less. Okay. Then the upper part, the tower part, is something like this. We'll say, again, this is not very accurate, but it'll give you sort of a sense of what we want to go. So it's kind of like here. More or less? Okay. So here's how we go through and put a roof on that. There's kind of 2 kind of interesting holes in this whole scenario. So we'll think about this. And let's talk about this lower roof first. For roofs are really, again, sort of very complicated objects. These are both roofs that I think you can probably best dictate as footprint roofs. And that is, we're going to trace the boundaries and kind of slope up the roof from there. But there's a couple nuances to it you need. So here, let's take that lower roof first. We'll put it on level 2, that's fine. I should actually draw on level 2. Well, I will typically go through, and I have different ways of doing this. I like to actually use walls and pick walls as the reference points, because then if the walls move, the roof moves, it kind of gives you a nice parametric locked relationship between everything. So in this sort of scheme, I'll put some overhang. Maybe it's about 2 feet. You'll figure that out by looking at the elevations. And I'll pick some walls. And I'll be 2'0". I'll be picking this wall and that wall. And notice as I'm picking walls, it's indicating a little sloping signal or symbol. Okay. When I get back over here around the tower, though, I'm not going to slope up from there because really the tower sort of intersects and comes up through the roof here. So I'll do it a little bit differently over there. I'll still pick walls, but for these little sections, I'm going to put a 0 in there because I don't want an overhang, and I want it to be right up against the edge of those. Okay, now, as I go through and I create this roof, I need a very clean boundary. You're going to find this for floors. It's also true for roofs. You need a kind of clean single boundary line to dictate the outside. So I could go through and cut those back. A very good tool for you all to learn about is the trim tool. The trim's like almost in drafting. It'll just kind of give you a very clean corner. So I'll say, hey, let's get this one and that one, this one and that one. Okay, so now I got a nice clean looking corner. So far so good? Okay, but we are not quite ready yet. All the different edges slope up right now. The truth is we don't want them all to slope up. Where it intersects with the tower, we don't want that to be a slope defining line. What I mean is, let's watch this. Let me do it. And I'll show you in 3D. Okay. What's happening now is it's not quite right because it's sort of honoring that edge of the tower as slope defining, and you don't want that to happen. What you can sort of have is these combinations of roofs where really that edge is not slope defining. Really what's going to happen to that edge and that edge is they won't define the slope, they'll just follow the slope. The lower edges will define it, but if we do that now, it'll come up like this. Okay, now that's looking pretty good, but there's still that hole in the roof. This is actually not so bad. You have a hole in your roof around the center. We can go ahead and address that too. The way you address that is, again, we'll sort of edit the boundary. And if you want to have a hole in your roof, what you do is you basically just trace an inner boundary. So if I, for example, just drew an inner boundary like that, okay, and again, I'm going to turn off slope defining. If I did it like this, it'd be like a donut where it would come up from both sides because both sides are indicated as the bottom of a slope, and that's not what I want. So what I'm going to do is grab these 4 edges. I'm going to Control-click to grab them all. And I will say turn off define slope. Okay, there's my hole in my roof. So that's not so bad. But I'll give you one other trick that'll just going to help you out. The truth is, if that hole is relatively even, there's actually sort of a really kind of clean relationship. The hole probably almost is guaranteed to have the same distance from the edge on all sides. So how you can do that is, over here, we'll edit that footprint. Not just have it here. I could just sort of put in a dimension here. I could say that's 20 feet in and 20 feet in there. Another way to do it is, I like to use this offsetting tool where I can pick a line and basically put another line a set distance away from it. So watch this. If I put in 20 there, and then offset to, I'm trying to get to the inside. There we go. Okay, so what I do is I just put lines that are 20 feet from all those edges. So now if I trim all those together, it's just roof geometry. Okay, and now I grab all those. A shortcut for grabbing all of them if you want to is just a tab. It'll get them all. You know, a nice clean hole. The hole will match the ridge lines and the valley lines. It'll be very nice. So that's about 90% towards the roof you need. We still need another little roof up on top of that tower, but that'll sort of get you kind of heading in the right direction. My building's very squatty compared to your building, but it's kind of, that's how it approaches your roof. That kind of sound about right? Yeah. Beautiful. Yes, questions? Sort of feel right? Okay, excellent. Well, we will say roof looks good. So, okay. I'm in my scheme over here, over there. Okay, we're open on that one. We're continuing on that one. We do a little scaling here. Okay, how about this? Let's go ahead and we'll start the structural modeling section and kind of along the way talk about these grids and the levels and whether they're all in sync with each other and stuff like that. Okay, actually, does anyone have a grid system they would like to donate to? Does anyone have some grids I can use? You already have the grids for the building. I'll gladly borrow your grids. If not, I'll just kind of create some. Do you have some out somewhere?
They submitted what were two?
Okay, no worries. Let's go out and we'll bring down your files and see if we can work with them.
Oh, did we include that? Oh, it's here.
And along the way, as we talk structural modeling, we'll talk about that beams and the visibility and that whole thing because that becomes a big issue. And roll up my sleeves because it's going to get interesting. Okay, oh, you have grids right there in levels. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Okay, let me go ahead and extract those out. And I will come up over here. I will do this open. Let me see if I can open up your levels and grids. See how they're looking. What a nice looking collection of levels and grids. That's good, looking good. Okay, and over here. Beautiful. Okay, let's address that issue of the linking and the not linking along the way, and then we'll start with these. So here's the deal. You give me this nice framework of levels and grids, and that should be good. I'm going to start building a structure on top of these in just a second. But along the way, someone mentioned that, oh, maybe their levels aren't updating and stuff like that. So let me kind of go through that, and we'll show you how that works. So I'm going to close these up. Only because I'm going to link to them from another file. Again, I can't have it open and link to it at the same time. So I'm going to create myself a new one. You've probably already done this, so don't worry if you've already done this. I'm just going to catch up with you. Use that architectural template. That's fine. I am going to go through and do my link to your levels and grids, being ever so careful not to go ahead and select center to center because I know that's going to get me in trouble later. And Fortune knows to correct me on that. Say open to that. And it's kind of incredibly uninteresting at this point because, oh, it's probably even that whole issue. Are we back to the whole issue where you're up at 100 feet and I'm still down at the, yes, it's that whole thing. Okay, great. No worries. We'll fix that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the level 2 that was already in here like we did last time. I'm going to do a little alignment just to sort of bring my level 1 up to your level 1. Or, actually, it's 100. We know that, right? So I'll put that in at 100. Okay. And then we're going to do that copy monitoring of the levels and grids. And this is probably how you got started. So that worked like this. We went to collaborate. We said, let's do some copy monitoring of something from a linked project. So we chose the linked project. And now we could go through and just go through and select those different items. Let me sort of see. Hang on, I'm going to copy. I can select them independently, or I can select multiple. Let me just go and grab them one at a time. And grab these two. Oops, that one I already copied. I sort of hit the wrong thing. Okay, now in theory, for each of these different things, if I get close enough to it, there should be little pulse marks that are kind of showing that everything's kind of copied and related to each other. And let's see if that's actually true. I want that to be linked in there. That looks like, yes, it's got the little pulse mark there. Okay, let's show you how this works. So I'm going to save this away. This is going to be my structural model. And again, I'm going to be linking to your grids, but can I have my... Okay, save that away. Oh, cancel that for a second. I do have to go through and finish my copy monitoring. I'm sort of in the middle of something right now. Thinks I am. Try it again. Save it. Okay. I got two things going on. I got a structural model which links to your grids. I got the original grids kind of hanging around over here. Here's the way it's supposed to work. If I say manage, and I go back to manage links, you can sort of see there's that linked file. You can see it even has this path to it. And it's considered a relative path. So relative paths work like this. Relative to my location where my file is, it's looking to find it in the same position. So if we're in the same folder, it's going to look in the same folder. If from the highest level of your hierarchy, you have a different path to get to the folder, it won't care because it's only going to look for my position downward when you say relative. There is another way to do it, and you can link things in so they're not relative, they're absolute. Absolute is see users, instructor, downloads in the full path. A very dangerous thing to do, okay, if, for example, you're using Dropbox and yours is see users Birchin folder and mine's see users Glenn folder, they won't match. So relative is usually the better choice. But if you do get in trouble and they're not matching, you can usually fix it by, even if you're sort of in a different relative or same absolute location, just be in the same relative location and you'll be in good shape. So I'm going to leave that set to relative. Okay. Oh, and if I needed to, if somehow it got lost, someone moved it, I just can't find it, not to worry. Just go ahead and choose it and say reload from, and then we'll go out and find it wherever it got moved to and relink it again. Okay, so that's just another way to find the file. Okay, so far so good. We got these linked files. Okay, let's go ahead and try something. What happened is I've been working away on my structural levels over here. Let me go ahead and close that up. Along the way, someone who knew better decided to go through and adjust the levels and decided to make a change. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go through and pretend that I am someone else, which I do often, and go to one of these elevations and choose one of these. So, someone over here made a change. They decided the roof really belonged up there. Okay. They save that away, and okay, everything seems to be good because the person making this file made a change they thought was valid. Okay, let's go back and assume we're the structural guy coming back into this. So I'm going to say open, and oh, hang on, I should just even get from, it's right there. Let's see what's going on here. Under collaborate. I'm expecting it actually to give me a message right now that sort of says that something got changed. But it's no, actually it just accepted. No, it's because it's the linked file. That's the linked file. What I'm expecting to happen right now is to notify me that the levels changed in my file. But I'm wondering if I actually did this right in terms of the linking. Hang on, I'll tell you in a second here. I'm getting ahead of myself, or behind myself, however you want to look at it. It's okay. No, somehow I didn't finish doing the copy monitor. Okay, let me turn that back on, and it was trying to tell me something along the way that I hadn't done something, and let's see if I can figure it out. Okay, again, go to the copy monitor, architecture, or collaborate, copy monitor, select the link, that linked project. I will copy. I will copy. Yeah, it's looking a little bit better. Let me go ahead and finish that up. So that finish I didn't see last time. I somehow got myself out of it. Let me save that away. Close that. I'll go back to that levels and grids and make the change again. Okay, so it's not here, it's really there. I'll save that away. Close that. And now when I go back to that structural model, what should happen, within like, okay. If it recognizes there's some sort of change, you'll get this message that says, hey, some Revit file needs a coordination review. That means that I've noticed something's changed that I was counting on. And if that's not happening, there's something about our copy link, our monitor is a little bit off. Let's sort of see what it does. It's okay. And so we'll go over to collaborate, and we'll say let's do a coordination review against the linked project. So here's what it now tells me. It says, okay, some level got moved by 27 foot 6 inches. So somehow between the level in the one project and the level in the other project, okay, it knows it's off. You can do this. You can postpone, which says, I don't want to deal with that right now. I'll deal with it later. You can reject, which says, I know there's a difference, and I'm not going to do anything about it. And we're going to have a standoff sometime later on. We can accept the difference or remove the level. And I got to remember which one's which in terms of, because I'm very, very bad about those. I think accept the difference is actually it. I can even put a comment in there. But if I apply that, it's okay. That's interesting. I think I'm supposed to do the other thing, which is move it. Somehow, so I'm trying to figure out what the difference between rejecting and accepting is. Yeah, that seems very odd, because I think that, yeah, I don't think that's really well worded. We'll see if we can make that happen again. Nope, since I already accepted it, I think we're in trouble now in terms of doing that. But basically, yeah, I'll do it again. Yeah, close that up. Actually, I shouldn't have done that. Open project, levels and grids. Again, I'll move something else. Go ahead and save that away. Okay, come back into the structural model. Again, something needs a coordination review. Okay, what do you want to bet this time? I know, it doesn't make sense, does it, right?
Since we tried the other one.
Exactly. Smart money says try the other one. So instead of postponing, what is it if we say move it? Okay, it actually does move it to match. So we'll have a little discussion about what the difference between accepting and rejecting is, because I'm not really sure in terms of, you know, it seems like they sort of do the same thing.
When you said accept.
Is that we're accepting the difference?
Mm.
Could be, but evidently moving is the correct answer to go ahead and follow it. But again, hopefully this won't happen to you too often. So we should actually kind of.
Strange. I wonder what you guys have done.
Well, I saw the new level.
Yeah.
So I just deleted the old one and matched.
Ah, okay. So what happens then is, although it's matching, it's not really linked.
Yeah, then.
Yeah. So if you copy monitored, it would work.
Oh, no, I did code monitor and I got that message.
Oh.
I just didn't know what to do.
Ah.
So I just
After
deleted
the-
it.
Okay.
I didn't know to go to coordination.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah,
No worries.
so-
Don't worry, we don't know.
Okay. Well, exactly. We'll get that figured out.
You have to try.
Okay, let us do
Take
this.
a break or?
Yeah. It is 3:20 right now. Let us do this. Go ahead, head on out for 5 minutes and come on back, because then when we come on back, what we are going to do is we are going to hit structural modeling hard, and we are going to go through and march very systematically through building that structure up one level at a time and how to duplicate that with columns, beams, beam systems, trusses, and ultimately along the way sort of figure out why our levels don't always show up or why our framing elements don't always show up. I think we got that one. Okay, so head on out and come back in 5, and we will do some new modeling for you that'll hopefully be very useful as you move into this next phase.